Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. This is News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken makes another diplomatic push to end Israel's war with Hamas. Says it's probably the best and maybe the last opportunity to get hostages home. Ukraine claims to have destroyed another strategic bridge over the same river in Russia's Kursk region. Battle tensions escalate. Presidential candidate Kamala Harris heads to the Democratic Party convention in Chicago. The U.S. President Biden to present keynote address at the convention in a goodbye of sorts. And Defense Minister Rajnath Singh to visit the United States this week. The visit assumes importance as India and the U.S. may sign unmanned drone deal. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Tel Aviv again as a proposed Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal hangs in the balance. The Secretary Blinken described the latest diplomatic push by Washington, D.C. as probably the best, maybe the last opportunity to get hostages home. In his meeting with Israeli President Isaac Herzog, the top U.S. diplomat said that Washington, D.C. was working to ensure that there was no regional escalation and concerns over a possible attack by Iran.
This is a decisive moment, probably the best, maybe the last opportunity to get the hostages home, to get a ceasefire, and to put everyone on a better path to enduring peace and security. I'm here as part of an intensive diplomatic effort on President Biden's instructions to try to get this agreement to the line and ultimately over the line. It is time for it to get done. It's also time to make sure that no one takes any steps that could derail this process. And so we're working to make sure that there is no escalation, that there are no provocations, that there are no actions that in any way could move us away from getting this deal over the line, or, for that matter, escalating the conflict to other places and to greater intensity.
While thanking the ceasefire efforts of the United States, Egypt and Qatar, Herzog said that there is no greater humanitarian objective than there is no greater humanitarian cause than bringing back hostages.
At the bottom line of it, people have to understand it starts with the refusal of Hamas to move forward. We are simply still very hopeful that we can move forward in the negotiations that are held by the mediators. And I want to thank the United States, Egypt, and Qatar for their efforts on behalf of this noble cause. There is no greater humanitarian objective and there's no greater humanitarian cause than bringing back our hostages home as they should have returned long ago.
Well, DD India's Sarah Coates now joins us live from Tel Aviv with more on the story. Sarah, how is Israel responding to Blinken's words of this being the last chance to bring hostages home?
Of course, people on the ground see it that way. You need to remember that there are more than 100 family members who haven't seen their loved ones in more than 10 months. They are still being held in the Gaza Strip. So, of course, there is a lot of anxiety here on the ground as demonstrations continue with people calling on Benjamin Netanyahu to do whatever it takes to get this deal across the line. But certainly, while there is a lot of hope, there is not a lot of optimism. Now, the US Secretary of State, it's his 9th wartime visit to the region. He actually drove along past behind me here on his way to Jerusalem about half an hour ago. He's going to meet with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, really trying to see if there's a way that he can soften his stance on these negotiations and try and get something actually finalised. Now, overnight, Hamas put out a statement seemingly rejecting this latest proposal put on the table by the United States. It put out a statement saying, After being briefed by mediators about what happened in the last round of talks in Doha, we once again came to the conclusion that Netanyahu is still putting obstacles in the way of reaching an agreement and is setting new conditions and demands. Now, this comes as Benjamin Netanyahu also held a cabinet meeting last night telling ministers that the chances are not high. Now, one of these major sticking points that we're seeing here, Mark, is the control over the Philadelphia corridor. This is a very thin strip of land that separates Gaza and Egypt. Now, Israel says it needs to be in control of this corridor. It says that that's because it has to stop weapons smuggling from Egypt into the Gaza Strip. But Hamas says that this is non-negotiable, saying that if this is part of the deal, then it will not accept it. So certainly there is a lot to iron out here. And on top of that, of course, you mentioned this looming threat from both Hezbollah and also Iran. And this is why we are seeing Blinken here engaged in just such heavy diplomacy, trying to bring the situation under control, trying to get this deal over the line in the hope that this could potentially bring down tensions in other parts of the region.
Indeed, Sarah, but, is there an acceptable outline to a peace deal at this point in time for Israel, given, as you said, the threat from Iran and its proxies?
Well, that is yet to be seen. We've been hearing from the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu time and time again that there will be no deal that leaves Hamas in control of the Gaza Strip. So certainly if there were to be a deal now, it potentially may only be a short-term ceasefire, and this is something that Hamas also says it will not accept. So this is a major stumbling block as well. It really feels like these two parties are in between a rock and a very hard place. And this is just why we're just seeing diplomacy in overdrive. We've seen visits from David Lammy, the UK's Foreign Secretary, also his French counterpart just last week. Now, the Secretary of State, he's here in the region, his 9th wartime visit. And we can expect these talks to pick up again later this week. But really, in terms of what we can expect from these talks, it isn't too much, given that these have just been going around and around in circles for many, many months now. So once again, not a lot of optimism here on the ground, although once again, this is why these diplomats are trying to get it over the line to potentially stop a wider scale regional war that could break out if indeed Hezbollah or Iran strikes Israel, as they have been promising to do.
Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv, thank you very much. Meanwhile, Israel's public broadcaster has said that several people were injured in cross-border fire with Lebanon on Monday. The Israeli military said that multiple targets crossed into Israel from Lebanon, adding that some were intercepted and others landed in Yara area in northern Israel. Tensions have soared in the region in recent weeks after a rocket strike blamed on Hezbollah killed 12 children and teens in the Israel-occupied Golan Heights. Israel responded with the killing of a top Hezbollah commander in the suburbs of Beirut. As the Russia-Ukraine conflict entered its 906th day on Monday, Ukraine's air defense units repelled Russia's overnight air attack, including on Kiev. Now, Ukraine's Air Force said that all 11 drones that Moscow launched targeting Ukraine's territory were destroyed. The Air Force said that the drones were destroyed over Mykolaiv, Kiev, Kharkiv, Sumy, Donetsk regions. Meanwhile, there was no immediate report of any damage due to the attack on the falling drone debris. And the Ukrainian Air Force also claimed that they've destroyed another strategic bridge over the same river in Ukraine, in fact, in Russia's Kursk region. This has limited the supply capacity of a Russian group opposing the Ukrainian advance. A video was posted on social media showing a growing cloud. This is from an explosion on a bridge, and one of its sections has been destroyed. Kiev said that it had seized more than 80 settlements in Kursk since launching the surprise attack across the border on August 6. The bridge is the second attack by Ukraine since Friday, Earlier, military analysts said there were 3 bridges in the area of the Ukrainian army's offensive through which Russia supplies its forces, and that 2 of them have been either destroyed or seriously damaged. Now, Russia has denied a report that Ukraine's attack on the Kursk region had derailed indirect talks with Kiev on halting strikes on energy and power targets, saying there had been no talks with Kiev about civilian infrastructure facilities. A US-based daily on Saturday reported that Ukraine and Russia were set to send delegations to Qatar this month to negotiate a landmark agreement halting strikes on energy and power infrastructure on both warring sides. According to a daily agreement, according to this daily, which we are quoting, the agreement would have amounted to a partial ceasefire, but the talks were derailed due to Ukraine's attack on Russian sovereign territory. Well, the Russian President Vladimir Putin, as we can see on the screen here, is actually making a trip to Azerbaijan. He's in Azerbaijan's capital, Baku. He's on a 2-day visit, and he was greeted, in fact, by Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev. Putin is expected to hold talks with Aliyev on bilateral relations, international and regional problems. That's happening today, Monday. And this marks Putin's first trip to Azerbaijan since 2018. It also comes at a time when Russia aims to reassert its role as a mediator between Azerbaijan and its adversary, Armenia. Okay, let's go across to Dasha Chernyshova, who's joining us live from Moscow with more on these stories. Dasha, now Russia says that it's captured another Ukrainian settlement, and Ukraine claims that it has blown up another bridge. What's the ground position, as per Russian authorities, let's say in Kursk?
Well, we understand that in the Kursk region, the Russian armed forces have continued to fight against the Ukrainian military, against the mobile groups that are deep in the forests of these border districts of the Kursk region. We also understand that the Russian MOD has been hitting the Ukrainian positions on the Ukrainian territory. For instance, we've heard from the Russian Ministry of Defense the confirmation that they have used their Su-34 jet to strike against the place where the concentration of the Ukrainian military and their military equipment has been located in the Ukrainian territory. They have also used the FAB 500 bomb. So certainly the situation is very fluid, and it is very difficult to get the accurate information with regards to how the disposition of forces is at the moment. But what we understand is that the MOD has been reinforcing its presence in the areas bordering Ukraine, not at the expense of the forces that are fighting in other areas along the front lines, especially in the area of the so-called special military operation. And the Russian Ministry of Defense has been insisting that they have been making certain gains elsewhere on the front lines, for instance, in Donetsk and in Donbas region, while fighting against the Ukrainian incursion on the Russian territory. Also, there have been repeated attacks against the civilian population of Russia's border regions, both Belgorod and Kursk, by the Ukrainian armed forces with the use of shelling, with the use of artillery. This is obviously a very difficult situation for the civilian population who is being evacuated from those territories, and that shelling is interfering with the process of evacuation of the civilians. That's why Moscow says those are the acts of terrorism.
Dasha, what's expected from President Putin's visit to Azerbaijan? What are the key priorities of the visit?
Well, we understand there will be the joint statements, the declaration signed by the two heads of state as a result of this two-day visit. On Sunday evening, the sides have sat down and they have held talks already. The second day of the visit is ongoing, with the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, laying flowers to the tomb of Heydar Aliyev in Baku. And the understanding is that there are issues that are related to the situation in the South Caucasus, the bilateral relations between between Moscow and Baku, as well as the settlements of the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia are high on the agenda. Interestingly, we've heard some of the opinions of the Russian analysts here who said that the very fact that Vladimir Putin is leaving the country at a time that Kursk incursion is ongoing is demonstrating how certain Moscow is in crushing the Ukrainian armed forces on its territory. So certainly a very important visit taking place at a very important juncture.
Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow, thank you very much. Now, still to come here on DD India News Hour. Mpox detected in a Filipino man who hasn't traveled outside the Philippines. China says the Philippine vessel has deliberately collided with its ship in the South China Sea. And Japan ruling LDP is to hold a leadership election on September 2. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. The U.S. Democratic Party's convention will kick off in the city of Chicago on Monday. The United States' Vice President Kamala Harris has arrived in the state ahead of the Democratic National Convention. Thousands of politicians, delegates and speakers are enthusiastic about officially nominating Vice President Kamala Harris and the Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to lead their party in the November election. Earlier this month, she secured enough pledged votes or delegates to become the Democratic Party's nominee and is slated to officially accept the nomination at the convention. Harris joined the presidential race nearly a month ago after President Joe Biden exited the race and endorsed her on July 21. The main part of the convention will take place at the United Center, home to two professional sports teams in the city, the Chicago Bulls and the Chicago Blackhawks. The capacity of the stadium is more than 20,000, and Harris is going to address this convention on Thursday. Now, Donald Trump is looking past the convention. He's looking to the September 10 debate against Harris while preparing by enlisting the help of the former Representative Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii. Gabbard had successfully dominated Kamala Harris on a debate in 2022 on the debate stage. This was when they were hoping to be the Democratic Party candidates at that time. Harris's ascent to the Democratic nomination has been nothing short of a surprise after President Joe Biden dropped out of the race. The four-day event will be like a party inside the convention. The DNC prepares for the official nomination of Harris. Let's look at a few things now. What is the convention? Let's try and understand this right from the beginning. So the two major parties of the United States, the U.S. political parties, they hold conventions each presidential election cycle, and they officially nominate their candidates and adopt a party platform. So the Democrats already have officially nominated Harris last month in a virtual vote of delegates due to concerns about ballot access in states with early deadlines. Now, when is the Democratic Convention? So the convention, as we said, is going to be running from August 19 to 22 in Chicago, in the United Center of Chicago. The public speeches and main stage events will run from 2200 hours to 3 a.m. GMT each night. And how can you watch these? Well, the primetime events will be broadcast on the major networks, streaming services including Hulu, Paramount Plus, Peacock and Max, the DNC YouTube and X channels, and various other news websites. Let's look at some of the key speakers. Biden is going to kick off the convention on Monday night. He's going to be the keynote speaker. It's a bittersweet keynote speech. The former presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton will be the marquee speakers. The former presidential candidate Hillary Clinton is also going to speak. Monday is to focus on Biden's administration, the policy achievements or accomplishments. Tuesday is going to contrast Trump's and Harris's visions for America. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who's Harris's running mate, will introduce himself to the Americans on Wednesday night. Thursday's program is highlighted by Harris's acceptance speech, and it's titled "For Our Future." So that's what the Democratic Convention is all about. Well, the U.S. Vice President and the Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris embarked on a campaign trip as well across western Pennsylvania on Sunday, meeting the locals and calling to achieve a ceasefire deal for Gaza. Diplomatic efforts to halt the Israel-Hamas conflict and secure a deal to return hostages held in Gaza have intensified in recent days. Talks mediated by the U.S., Egypt and Qatar are set to continue this week in Cairo. Harris and the Minnesota Governor Tim Walz visited with locals in Moon Township and also in Koroplos. This is after holding a rally in Pittsburgh. The Pennsylvania tour takes place with just 79 days left for the election.
Conversations are ongoing, and we are not giving up, and we are going to continue to work very hard on this. We got to get a ceasefire, and we got to get those hostages out.
Well, the war of words between the presidential rivals in the United States is getting shriller with each passing day. The U.S. Republican candidate Donald Trump's his remark about left lunatic did not go down too well with the Democratic Party circles. Kamala Harris on Sunday came out heavily against her rival.
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris was on a campaign trail in Pennsylvania on Sunday, where her Republican rival Donald Trump made many personal attacks, ridiculing her. On Sunday, Kamala took the opportunity to give a stinging reply to Trump. She termed Trump a coward who demeans his rivals and does not argue on the substance.
What we know is the real and true measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you lift up. That's what we see as strength. We know what strength looks like. That's what strength looks like. Anybody who's about beating down other people is a coward.
On Saturday, Donald Trump had ridiculed Harris during a rally in Omaha, Pennsylvania. He called Kamala Harris a left radical and a lunatic, and even commented on the way she looks and laughs.
People say, be nice. Have you heard her laugh? That is the laugh of a crazy person. That is the laugh of a crazy. It's the laugh of a lunatic. Have you heard it? You know, they prohibited her. They prohibited her for laughing. I've been waiting for her to laugh, because as soon as she laughs, the election's over.
With 19 electoral votes for presidential elections, one of the highest counts among all states, Pennsylvania is important for both Harris and Trump. In 2020, Biden won the state, but this time Trump is trying hard to gain against his rival, because 4 years earlier, in 2016, Trump got the majority in Pennsylvania that brought him to the White House. This makes Pennsylvania a swing state in true sense, and that is perhaps the reason why both rivals are vying hard to get the attention of voters here. Akhilesh Suman's report for DD India.
China's President Xi Jinping has held talks with Vietnam's new leader Tom Lam. This meeting took place in Beijing on Monday. China and Vietnam inked 14 documents spanning cross-border railways to crocodile exports on Monday. The meeting between Xi and Lam, it signals the close ties between the two communist-run neighbors. which have well-developed economic and trade relations despite occasional strains over their competing claims in the South China Sea. Now, tension has been escalating in the South China Sea. China's Coast Guard said that a Philippine vessel that had ignored its repeated warnings deliberately collided with a Chinese vessel in an unprofessional and dangerous manner. In a statement issued on Monday, China's maritime security said the same Philippine vessel then entered waters near 2nd Thomas Shoal after being prevented from entering the Sabina Shoal waters. China's Coast Guard took control, and the Philippines ship was put away, was given a warning as per the law. The Philippines to immediately stop infringement and provocation and bear all consequences. That was the warning. Now, China and the Philippines reached a provisional agreement in July after repeated altercations near the 2nd Thomas Shoal island. What's happened is that China has been sharply criticized by Western nations for aggression in blocking the Philippine efforts to resupply troops aboard a naval ship that it intentionally grounded 25 years ago. Beijing claims almost all of the South China Sea, including both the shoals, rejecting the 2016 ruling by the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague that Beijing's expansive claims had no basis under international law. Here's Will Denslow with more.
Well, the incident, according to Chinese officials, occurred around 3:30 on Monday morning. We've heard a statement released by Gan Yu, a spokesperson for China's Coast Guard, who said it was an illegal incursion, adding that it violated previous agreements in place between Manila and Beijing. And there has been really an escalating war of words between the two sides in recent days, and this certainly the most significant action we've seen in recent days, with China accusing the Philippine Coast Guard vessel of deliberately ramming a Chinese Coast Guard and for allegedly ignoring warnings. We're still waiting to hear from Manila in response to this incident, but important to note that this comes just a few days after China's foreign ministry stated on Friday that any provocations, any deemed provocations in the South China Sea, hotly contested between Beijing and Manila, would be met with strong and resolute measures. This has been a long-standing dispute, not just between the Philippines and China, but a number of nations in the region. The Spratly Archipelago and these particular shoals fall within the Philippine economic zone, 200 nautical miles off the coast of the Philippines. So the Philippines very much claims ownership of this particular shoal in the South China Sea. China claims control of much or most of the South China Sea for itself. So that is why there is this long-standing dispute. The Court of Arbitration ruling against Beijing back in 2016, that was a ruling that was rejected by China. So these disputes very much remain. And why we're seeing this escalation now? Well, a major reason, according to analysts, is because of Philippine efforts to resupply this grounded Navy ship that's been there for around 25 years, but of course needs constant supplies. This has been an issue that has been a constant source of tension. It certainly irks Beijing, so perhaps a major reason why we're seeing this escalation in what has been a long-going, bubbling source of tension.
Now, South Korea and the United States kicked off annual summertime military exercises on Monday, seeking to boost their joint readiness to fend off North Korea's weapons and cyber threats. The Ulchi Freedom Shield exercises, set to end on August 29, came as North Korea races to advance its nuclear and missile programs and tries to launch reconnaissance satellites. The drills will reflect realistic threats across all domains, including the North's missile threats, but also GPS jamming, cyber attacks, and other lessons learned from recent incidents, the two countries' militaries have said. South Korea will separately carry out the simultaneous government-led Ulchi civil defense drills under the scenario of a nuclear attack by the North. Seoul and Washington say that the exercises are defensive and a response to the North's threats. Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party is finalizing plans to hold the party's leadership election on, in fact, it's going to happen on September 27. So the chosen party leader is poised to become the next Prime Minister of Japan. Given the LDP's dominant position in the lower house, the current Prime Minister Fumio Kishida was going to step down in September after completing a 3-year tenure, troubled by public dissatisfaction over political scandals. The Philippines has detected a new case of the Mpox virus in the country, the first since December last year, as per its health department, adding that it awaits test results before being able to determine which strain of the virus it is. The patient is a 33-year-old Filipino male and he has had no travel history outside the Philippines. The World Health Organization on Wednesday declared Mpox a global public health emergency, its highest form of alert following an outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo that has spread to neighboring countries. The new form of the virus has triggered global concern as it seems to spread easily through routine close contact. Elsewhere in Africa, countries affected by the Mpox virus, they are ramping up measures to ensure that the virus is contained. The virus has so far spread to at least 13 countries on the continent, and the World Health Organization warns of a potential to spread even further. Sweden and Pakistan have also reported cases, with the EU announcing a travel advisory to affected countries. Isabel Nakira reports.
In response to the outbreak, affected countries in Africa have created incident management teams to step up preventive measures. Teams have been deployed at borders and at the airports to carry out testing and detection, contact tracing, and increasing awareness to ensure compliance. Isolation units have also been set up at the borders, where suspected cases are monitored as samples are taken for testing. Now, the World Health Organization says it's releasing $1.5 million in the coming days to respond to the emergency. The WHO is also speeding up the process of listing the vaccines available for emergency use. Countries in the global north have been urged to donate stockpiles of smallpox vaccines, which can also be used for monkeypox. Isabel Nakiria in Kampala reporting for DD India.
Now, still to come here on DD India News Hour. Sudan to send a delegation to Cairo for talks with the US and Egyptian mediators. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim to arrive in India to boost multi-sectoral cooperation agenda. And Raksha Bandhan, the traditional bond between brothers and sisters, is being celebrated in India and across the world.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Let's get you a recap of the main stories. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken makes another diplomatic push to end Israel's conflict with Hamas, says it's probably the best and maybe the last opportunity to get hostages home. Ukraine claims to have destroyed another strategic bridge over the same river in Russia's Kursk region. The battle tensions have escalated. And presidential candidate Kamala Harris heads to the Democratic Party convention in Chicago. U.S. President Biden to present the keynote address at the convention in a goodbye of sorts. Let's shift our focus to Africa and in Sudan, where the government says that it's going to send a delegation to Cairo on Monday, and they're going to discuss with the United States and Egyptian officials concerns of the government that need to be addressed before its participation in peace talks, which are aimed at ending the 16-month civil war across the country. Here's Naba Moidin with a report.
According to Sudan's ruling Sovereign Council, this step came after discussions with U.S. Special Envoy to Sudan and Egyptian government, which is a key player and facilitator in the talks between the Sudanese army and the RSF. Also, Egypt is limited to discuss the implementation of Jeddah Declaration signed in May 2023, which has many articles, but one of the main points for the army is that the RSF should leave the civilian areas before any progress could be made in the Geneva talks or in any other talks. We know that the army has not sent delegation to Geneva because it insisted on the implementation of Jeddah Declaration and many points. One of other points are the participation of United Arab Emirates as an observer of the talks, because it's accusing the UAE of supporting the RSF militia during the 16 months of war, which UAE has denied. So we are expecting that Cairo meetings will pave the way for further discussions and may make a breakthrough in the political scene in Sudan, and also may lead to the involvement of the Sudanese army in Geneva talks that aim to end the over 1 year of war in Sudan that resulted in a very devastating humanitarian crisis and food insecurity for more than 25 million people out of 50 million population in Sudan. The situation in Sudan is getting worse every day. The atrocities against civilians and the killing is also increasing every day unless the two warring parties sit in one negotiation table and end this war very soon. We are expecting a further a worse situation and a further deterioration in the scene generally. Naba Muhyiddin reporting from Port Sudan in Sudan for DD India.
Let's take a look now at other stories making news around the world. Ernesto has become a hurricane once again, causing dangerous rip currents on beaches across the U.S. East Coast and Canada. The U.S. National Hurricane Center expects it to intensify over the next 12 hours before weakening and becoming a post-tropical cyclone on Tuesday. At least one person died and 6 people were missing after a luxury yacht was struck by a whirlwind and it sank off the coast of the Sicilian capital, Palermo, the Sicilian capital, I beg your pardon. Now, what's happened is that Italy's Fire and Coast Guard had earlier said that divers were searching for 7 missing people and did not immediately confirm that a body had been found. As tributes for the French legend Alain Delon poured in from film fans around the world following his death at 88, France was preparing a farewell for one of its great stars on Monday. Emotional mourners gathered outside the countryside chateau in Duchy Montcorbin, which is south of Paris, and no national tribute has been planned, as Delon had made it clear that he did not want any. The Malaysian Prime Minister Dato Seri Anwar bin Ibrahim will be on a 3-day visit to India beginning Monday. This will be the first visit by Anwar Ibrahim as the Prime Minister of Malaysia. India's External Affairs Minister said Prime Minister Anwar will hold bilateral discussions with Prime Minister Modi on Tuesday. During his visit, he will also meet President Draupadi Murmu and the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. Nepal's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Arzu Rana Dwaba, is in India on a 5-day official visit at the invitation of the External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. Jaishankar. Both leaders held a bilateral meeting on Monday in New Delhi, and the visit is expected to strengthen ties between the two countries, which are neighbors, and allow them to review the progress of their bilateral cooperation. India's Defense Minister Rajnath Singh is going on an official visit to the United States. Well, India's Defense Minister Rajnath Singh is embarking on that 5-day visit to the United States from August 21. And he is scheduled to meet the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. And as per reports, the India-US, the two countries may sign what's called the MQ-9B unmanned drone deal during this visit. India's Defense Acquisition Council had amended indigenous content and other aspects of the deal. Rajnath Singh will also meet representatives from the U.S. defense industry, and the minister is also scheduled to interact with the Indian diaspora. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman chaired the meeting to review the performance of public sector banks on various parameters in New Delhi on Monday. The meeting was attended by the Secretary, Department of Financial Services, along with the incoming Secretary M. Nagaraju. The MDs and CEOs of the public sector banks, besides senior officials of the Department of Financial Services, attended. Days after the Kolkata High Court had expressed displeasure over the handling of the case relating to the alleged rape and murder of a junior doctor at the R.G. Kar Medical Hospital or College in Kolkata, transferred the probe to the CBI, the Supreme Court has now taken suo motu cognizance of the August 9 incident. A 3-judge bench presided over by the Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, is going to hear the matter on Tuesday. Meanwhile, the resident doctors of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences in Delhi said that their strike is going to continue. The doctors have decided to provide free elective OPD services of around 36 specialties to patients outside Nirman Bhavan. The investigation is underway as the former principal of the R.G. Kar Medical College and Hospital, Sandeep Ghosh, has been questioned by the CBI in connection with the horrific incident. India is celebrating Raksha Bandhan with great fervor on Monday. This festival of Raksha Bandhan is synonymous with the bond of protection and love between brothers and sisters. On the occasion, sisters tie colorful rakis around the wrists of their brothers, and they pray for their prosperity, health and well-being. In return, the brothers pledge to protect and support their sisters and present them with gifts. Prime Minister Narendra Modi celebrated Rakhi or Raksha Bandhan with the schoolgirls tying Rakis to his wrist in the national capital on Monday. In a video, schoolgirls were seen tying the Rakhi to Prime Minister Modi on the festival of Raksha Bandhan. The Prime Minister also interacted with children. Earlier, PM Modi greeted people on the occasion of Raksha Bandhan and prayed for everyone's happiness and prosperity. Raksha Bandhan is a festival deeply rooted in Indian culture and has been celebrated for centuries. Let's take a look at other stories making the news. A Pune court has summoned Congress leader Rahul Gandhi to appear on Monday in a defamation case concerning alleged defamatory remarks that he made about Indian politician and activist Vinayak Damodar Savarkar during a visit to the United Kingdom. The annual Amarnath Yatra concluded on Monday after continuing for 52 days as the Chari Mubarak, or the saffron-robed holy mace, reached the Amarnath cave atop the Himalayas in southern Kashmir. Amid traditional offerings and hymns this morning, it marked the final culmination of the Yatra. Still to come here on DD India News Hour. It's World Photography Day today. And in the Premier League, Manchester City opens in style, beating Chelsea 2-0 at Stamford Bridge. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Now, the world is celebrating Photography Day today, celebrating all types of photography. The theme this year is an entire day, as it aims to capture and highlight different aspects of what happens around the world. World Photography Day is an annual worldwide celebration of art, craft, science, and history of photography. It commemorates the invention of a form of photography way back in 1839, marking a pivotal moment in the history of photography. It also revolutionized visual representation. World Photography Day encourages photographers and enthusiasts worldwide to showcase their creativity and share their perspectives, and also promote the universal language of image. The first supermoon of 2024 rises over Sydney Opera House. A rare convergence of a supermoon and a blue moon marks the first of 4 consecutive supermoons this year. Now, as per NASA, the moon will appear full for 3 days, from Sunday morning through early Wednesday morning, and the moon is considered a supermoon when it reaches the closest point to the Earth in its orbit, making it look much larger than it make it look larger, obviously, because it's closer. But a blue moon does not refer to its color, but when there are 2 full moons in a single month. So, India is in fact going to witness the phenomena corresponding with Raksha Bandhan, which is happening today, both tonight as well as tomorrow. Japan's national and Tokyo governments, they have been seeking a 4.7 billion valuation for Tokyo Metro in what would be the nation's biggest IPO in roughly 6 years. The two governments, which own 100% of the Tokyo Metro, they plan to arrange a meeting of the brokerage within a week for a briefing on the IPO, and also expect to receive approval for the listing from the Tokyo Stock Exchange as soon as mid-September. With half the company to be sold, the IPO could raise 350 billion yen at that valuation, which would exceed the size of the Kokusai Electric IPO last year and become the largest since the SoftBank Group listed its wireless unit in 2018. The IPO follows the listing of other railway operations. Tokyo Metro runs 195 kilometers of lines carrying 6.5 million passengers once a day. And you're watching DD India News Hour, and time now for the sports news. And for that, I have with me my colleague Siddharth Bhattbharaj. So, Siddharth, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Let's begin with football now. Reigning Premier League champions Manchester City started off their campaign with a win against Chelsea 2-0 at Stamford Bridge. On Sunday, Erling Haaland's 100th appearance for Manchester City opened the scoring with an 18th minute goal. In the second half, Chelsea tried to fight back when Nicholas Jackson received a deflected ball from Manchester City's goalkeeper. However, the Senegal forward was found to be offside. When Chelsea failed to fight back, Mateo Kovacic sealed the deal for Manchester City as he scored another goal for the team in the 84th minute. And world number 1 Yannick Sinner defeats Alexander Zverev in a 3-set thriller to secure a spot in the final. The 23-year-old had lost all 4 of his previous encounters against Zverev, but battled through a hip problem to end his losing streak and advance to the final. Despite some limping, the Italian player never lost his focus and produced a stunning performance to top Zverev in 3 hours and 7 minutes. Sinner will now go head-to-head with American Francis Tiafoe in the final of the tournament for the chance to win his 5th ATP Tour title this season. And Aryna Sabalenka beat world number 1 Iga Swiatek for the first time this season to secure a spot in the Cincinnati Open final. The pair had met twice before in 2024, but Sabalenka had lost both. This match was the first time Sabalenka beat Swiatek in straight sets, finally getting the best of her rival 6-3, 6-3. Sabalenka, who is in her first Cincinnati Open final, said that she feels she had finally broken the wall. Sabalenka is now set to lock horns with Jessica Pegula in Monday's final, who defeated Spain's Paula Badosa 6-2, 3-6, 6-3 in the other semi-final. Oval Invincibles defeat Southern Brave in the final to clinch the 100th title for the second consecutive year. Invincibles became the first men's side to win the 100 back-to-back after they beat Brave convincingly by 17 runs. Brave started the chase strongly but then collapsed from 58 for no loss to 102 for 7. Thanks to Adam Zampa's initial breakthrough and Saqib Mahmood's 3 wickets in 7 balls. Will Jacks put on a crucial all-round performance as he scored a 22-ball 37 and took the key wicket of Braves skipper. Timon Mills led the Braves attack, taking 3 for 33. Well, that's in the world of sport. Over to you, Mark.
Well, thanks a lot, Siddharth. And some more news now. Well, the in Salalah, which is in Oman, the Al-Balid archaeological site offers a glimpse into ancient civilization. Well, the site dates back 2,500 years and it was once a thriving port city. It now features the remains of a grand mosque. Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour. Let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those of you on the go, get the latest news and updates from DD India and across the world on our mobile app, which is available in Android as well as iOS platforms. And you can download it by scanning on the QR code on your screen. But we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. My name is Mark Lin. With me is Siddharth. Thanks very much for being with us here on DD India News Hour. Namaskar. So, okay.